What's up, guys? Welcome to Token Poodoo, a Star Wars show where I am reacting, note the word reacting, and somewhat reviewing the first episode of Star Wars The Bad Batch, the new Disney Plus Star Wars TV show, animated TV show, of course, from Dave Filoni, continuing off from where the Clone Wars finished off. So, what did I think of the first episode? It's a 70-minute episode, so it's almost feature length, and it does very much feel like a continuation of the Clone Wars. Now, if you know anything about the Clone Wars or anything about my opinions on the Clone Wars, I love that show. I think it's brilliant. So to have this essentially be a season 8 of the Clone Wars, it seems is really cool. I like this episode quite a bit. I think of all the animated TV shows, so Clone Wars, Rebels, Resistance, I think this is the best opening episode of any of those shows. So that in itself is saying something. It remains to be seen where it's going to go and how well it's going to progress. I don't imagine this show is going to be a long-winded show. I do think this is going to be one of them TV shows that only has a couple or maybe just a few seasons. I don't think it's going to have like 7-season run or anything like that. Again, remains to be seen. But this show, it starts off, Order 66 has been enacted at the end of Revenge of the Sith. The Bad Batch, this genetically altered group of clones, has to navigate what's going on there. The Jedi are being killed, the clones are being sent back to Kamino to be put under evaluation from Tarkin. What's going to happen with this new empire? And that's where this really sets off. The way in which it links the prequels to the Clone Wars TV shows, to the Rebels TV show, to the original trilogy is really cool. There's elements from all of these coming into there together and it works really, really well. And again, to compare it to the Clone Wars, the animation style of the Clone Wars is very present here, especially the last season of the Clone Wars. So the last season of the Clone Wars had a bit of a different look from the prior seasons in that it's much more advanced now. There's depth of field, there's lots of shading and shadowing, and it's highly detailed. It looks like a feature film quality animation now. If you go back and watch the original season of the Clone Wars, it's a little tough to get into that again. Even though I liked it at the time, it does not hold up. It's a little ugly. This feels like a completely different look, and they've advanced it again even more, much more detail. And that's one of the things I want to get across on the animation here, that has tons and tons of detail. A lot of animation, they'll just put the detail where you need to see it, and then the rest will be a little sparse, a little empty. So this one, no, doesn't do that. The environments are highly detailed, the characters are highly detailed. You can see like blemishes and wrinkles on characters. There's like a paint style to it all, where if you look at like Tarkin's face, for example, you can see like the brush strokes on his cheeks and so on. It's really cool. It adds to the sort of mood of the show, and it actually gives it a unique look. I just love the animation, the lighting, everything about it, the whole look of the show. The show is 70 minutes long, this first episode. The rest are going to be much more like 25-minute episode lengths, so much more standard. I do think this was slightly long. I think maybe you could have cut it down a little bit. I do think also that this was arguably 2 episodes that they then just edited together. I don't think this was the original plan, but maybe I'm wrong. Either way, I liked this first episode. I thought it was a really good start to a show. And the big thing that I'm worried about is the main cast of characters, the Bad Batch. So they quickly establish Hunter, the leader of the group, is very much going to be the main character, with Echo coming in there as like a voice of conscience, and Tech and Wrecker. So here's where the problem is. Wrecker. Wrecker is annoying, and this episode, it really shows just how much depth these characters have. There's a surprising amount of depth to some of the characters. Wrecker, I think they have to do a lot of work on, because at first glance he looks like he's just going to be a loudmouth who's constantly just wants to blow things up, who constantly just wants to attack and be in a battle and all that stuff. It's very generic stuff, and he's constantly shouting, he's very loud, and he's a bit distracting, to be honest. But then there's a moment in this episode where he's looking for something, and then another character finds his teddy bear. So there's like a soft side to him as well. I think the show needs to constantly do that, specifically with this character, because If you don't find him annoying now, I guarantee you if that doesn't happen, if he doesn't get fleshed out a bit more, if we don't get to dive into his character, a lot of people are going to be really annoyed by him. And of course, it's worth saying that clearly this character, because of the genetic alterations he's had, he's got physical strength enhancements, but mentally that's where it's being impacted on. So I'm not, of course, saying anything negative in that regard, but the way he's presented here is just a little annoying, and they need to work on balancing that out a bit more. The villain is introduced or established here in that it is, what's his name? Crosshair or Crossfire? I can't remember. The Sniper. He's the villain of this series. It makes sense to make one of them the bad guys because we know the character already, somewhat, and it makes it a much more of a personal conflict running through this show. And I think it leaves things off in a good way. He's clearly going to be hunting down the Bad Batch. There's also a new character introduced in this season called Omega. So Omega, what's really interesting about this character is that they are a clone. Who are they a clone of? Well, personally I thought they were a clone of Jango Fett. I thought they were just a female clone of Jango Fett that maybe was altered in some way. Looking around, maybe that's not the case. Maybe they are a clone of someone else entirely. That's very possible. But it is worth saying that they went to the effort of casting a New Zealand actress to play this character. Jango Fett actor Temuera Morrison is from New Zealand. So maybe that's just a coincidence, I don't know. But personally, I think this is a female clone of Jango Fett, and I think that idea is super cool. I think that's really interesting. And regardless of who they're a clone of, whether that's even going to be a thing moving forward, I think this character itself is very likable, right from the word go. They're clearly going to be important, they're clearly going to be the heart and soul of this show, they're clearly going to be the Ahsoka or the Grogu of the Bad Batch. And it's going to be interesting to see how they fit in, what exactly makes them special, because they're clearly also a genetically altered clone. I think there's more to it. If it is just a clone of Jango, I don't think it's just that it's a female clone of Jango. I think this person does have some sort of special ability. And it's kind of hinted at maybe they're empathic, maybe there's some sort of telepathic element to it, I don't know. But it's super interesting, a really good way to establish this character. They're very likable, they're very well voice acted as well, I would say that as well. Voice acting, just while I'm getting on it, D. Bradley Baker voices all the clones. He continues to be amazing. The fact that he gives each clone a different voice while also sounding the same, clearly being the same person, and so much depth and range he's got, it's brilliant. But yeah, Star Wars The Bad Batch, Episode 1. There's one thing I do want to mention, one negative. Kanan. So Kanan is in this episode, or Caleb Dune as he's called, because that's his real name. We see Padawan Kanan here, the end of the Clone Wars, Order 66. We see how his master was killed, how he survived Order 66. The problem is that we've already seen how Kanan survived Order 66 in his comic book run, Kanan, The Last Padawan. I think that's what it's called. But anyway, in that comic book, the events of him surviving Order 66 are very different from the events of this show. So they've retconned it. They've changed canon. They've altered his origin story. Now yeah, the same thing does kind of happen. His master gets killed by a group of clones that they're working with, and he ends up on the run. That concept's exactly the same. But where it's happening, how it's happening are different. The fact that the Bad Batch is there is different. So it's not a huge deal, but it does make me worry about the future of Star Wars if they can just go in and say, look, here's what was canon. How about we take that and change it? So I am a little worried. What happens if like the current Star Wars book I'm reading is suddenly made non-canonical in 3 years' time when a new TV show comes out and wants to deal with that event again? It's a little concerning. The whole thing about Star Wars being canon, everything is Star Wars related, comic books, novels, video games, TV shows, films, everything, they're all in the same universe, they're all part of the same story, only now they're starting to contradict each other. Hopefully this is just a one-off. Again, this is a minor instance in that it's the same idea still happens, the same concept, the same story still happens. It's just a little different. So it's not a huge deal, but it just means that we've got to be careful moving forward in that all of this Star Wars content, some of it might not be as relevant or as important as we think it is, and it might turn out that, hey, TV shows and the films do take precedence over the rest. So it's a little concern in that way. But anyway, that's what I thought of The Bad Batch Episode 1, called Aftermath, by the way. Dave Filoni is involved in the show, he's producing the show, but he's not the executive director, he's not the head writer of this show like he was on the Clone Wars and Rebels, because he's much more involved in The Mandalorian. So it'll be interesting to see how this show progresses without quite as much input from him. He was credited as a writer on this episode, a co-writer at that way, but I don't think he's going to be as involved, so it'll be interesting to see just what happens when he isn't quite as hands-on. Because Star Wars Resistance, same thing, he was a producer on that show, but he wasn't involved in the writing or directing of it as much as he was in all the others. And Resistance, not great. So this one, a really promising start. I'm looking forward to see what happens next, and yeah, 16 episodes as well. Quite a good run. Looking forward to more. So, here's what's happening now. I plan on doing a little reaction video like this to every episode of The Bad Batch this season. I cannot guarantee that I'm going to do that. There might be a few episodes that I missed out. There might be ones where I do like episodes maybe 3 and 4 I do in one video rather than 2 separate ones or whatever. But the plan is to react and review every single episode of this season, and then at the end do a full season long review. And yeah, we'll see how that works out. But until next time though, thanks for watching this video, subscribe to my channel, and follow me on Twitter and Instagram at @the_Grant Burton. But otherwise, goodbye, thanks for watching.